I've shared the link on how to download your certificate. Kindly click the link and fill in the details, the attendance detail. You'll be able to fill your email, the session that is February 19th today, and the code is 201. You'll fill your first name and the last name as you want them to appear in your certificate. Then select Capable Limited as your training provider. Then you'll be able to rate and your certificate will be available to your email that you'll be able to select. That is the way to download your certificate. The code is 201. You'll click the link and fill the form with the details of the training, including your name, and you'll be able to receive your certificate immediately we finish the session. Thank you very much. In case of any concern, in case of any training needs, kindly feel free to email us at info@capable limited or at customer service at Capable Limited, and we'll be able to assist you effectively. So we are going to begin. I'm going to introduce our expert for today. Diana Kemunto will be able to pick it from there, will introduce herself, and will be able to continue with our training data protection for today. Kindly feel free to ask as many questions as possible so that we may continue to learn together, as we'll be able to answer questions at the end of the session. Welcome, Diana. You can proceed.
An advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I believe you can hear me.
Yes, we can now hear you. We can now hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Raise
So my name is Diana Kemunto, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, a legal officer at Naivas, as well as the acting data protection officer. I'm also the events coordinator for the Association of Privacy Lawyers in Africa. So my expertise in terms of the legal framework is in data protection and corporate and commercial law. As I've practiced both and I'm still interested and have an interest in them. So for today, my introduction is that brief. I don't have much to say. So today I am happy to be here. We have worked with Capable a few times, and I'm happy to be taking you through what all public officers and citizens must know when it comes to data protection. For instance, what do you know now? What don't you know? And what do you need to know? So mainly, that's what our presentation today will be about. However, there's a video I wanted us to watch. I'm not sure if you're going to hear it or anything, but we'll just confirm so that you can. It's more of a data breach animation on how well you can understand in terms of maybe pictorial on what data protection is and how data breaches or rather phishes take place. So that is some of the things that we are going to cover during this session. So first of all, we'll go through the overview of data protection in public offices. We'll do the data protection legal framework in Kenya mostly, the parties in data protection, data control and processor registration, because these are some of the information that you should be aware of, either as a citizen or as a public officer. So we have the data protection and privacy policies and notices, contents, notices and policies, principles in data protection, the rights of a data subject, how is data protection applicable in public offices. Then we'll go through data security and governance, then non-compliance, and the statutory implications that come about with the non-compliance. Then the post-sensitization expectations. What are some of the expectations? This you can share in the chat. What do you expect after this session? And will they be addressed? So some of the issues that we'll cover, they'll be merged together. They'll not be specific, but yes. So when it comes to overview of data protection in public offices, one of the main things is regulatory compliance. For instance, when you are visiting a public office is mostly the governmental offices where we have public records or where the purpose of them is to meet the needs of the citizens and how well they can be met. So we have the ministries, we have the chiefs' offices, we have all these offices where we have schools, institutions, all of them are public offices as explained in the Constitution of Kenya. So the first one is regulatory compliance. Then we go to training. While at it, when it comes to data protection, there is need for regular training of the staff members as well as the public officers, as well as sensitization. For instance, we have now the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, which is a public office. We see them doing sensitization in the different towns that they intend or counties that they intend to have an office. Last month, there was a sensitization in Eldoret because that is during the month of the week of data privacy and protection. That's where they had their annual conference where there was this. So there is need for sensitization and training of staff members. Most of these are just certificate of participation so that the staff members are quite knowledgeable about what is expected of them when it comes to data protection, what they should do, what they should not do, and how well they're supposed to handle, for instance, the documents they receive both physically and through the electronic means. Then we go to what are some of the necessary measures in handling data. For instance, not everyone has access to every information when you go to a public office. There's the IT team that maybe has certain information that not everyone will have. So for that, we have the limitations, some of the limitations when handling data, or when you receive a document, or when you receive an email that has been highlighted with the words confidential. How do you go about it? So this is mainly within the office. Then we go to how to handle our counterparts data. When I talk about counterparts, I mean, for instance, when I visit their offices, maybe I need something, I'm a visitor, they have their employee data, they have their supplier data. For instance, the person in charge, or rather the company in charge of supplying them with, let's say, internet connection. So there's that. Then while these offices, we visit them, the data security and governance. What are some of the measures that they have put in place to ensure that data protection is at its core, everything is in line, and they have prevented the imminent threats of cyber attacks or such thing. Then we go to data subjects, privacy and satisfaction. So when you go to visit them and you see how your data is handled, are you satisfied? Are you satisfied with how they have done their services? And also, another thing is, are you satisfied? Have the public offices ensure that your privacy has been protected through and through? So those are some of the things that an overview of the data protection in public offices. Then now we go to the legal framework on data protection in Kenya. So we have our guiding laws on data protection, and the first of all is the data protection. No, the Constitution of Kenya. The Constitution of Kenya is where we derive all our rights. The Constitution under Article 31 provides for the right to privacy of all persons, which include individuals as well as in corporations. When we talk about corporation, we're talking about companies, non-governmental organization, any organization. Then we have the Data Protection Act of 2019. Then we'll have the Data Protection General Regulations, then the other regulations. Then we have the GDPR, which was one of the international legal framework that was enacted that covers the EU community. Then we have the guidance notes. These are mainly provided by the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner's Office, then the Office of the Data Commissioner. Then we go to the data protection, the complaints, as well as the regulations. And now we also have case laws, the determinations which are held by the ODPC, which we take them as precedents, and there are many highlighted because during your interactions when you're researching on maybe data protection, will come across many cases where the ODPC has given a determination on after a complaint has been made, for instance, promotional messages when you receive them, the use of images without the consent, and all that. So we go to what is the mandate of the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner that is in Kenya. So this was established under the Data Protection Act, which I've highlighted as DPA, is the primary body responsible for enforcing the data privacy and protection compliance and sensitization in Kenya. So what can it do? It can conduct investigation on its own initiative, or even once a complaint has been made. It can facilitate conciliation, mediation, negotiation on disputes. For instance, a complaint has been made, the parties will be called, they'll try to address the issues raised, and then to come to a mutual understanding that is both beneficial to both parties. This can include maybe compensation if the image or rather the name was used for commercial purposes. So there's that. Then they may require any person that is subject to the data protection to provide explanation, information, and assistance, and also impose administrative fines for failures to comply with the DPA. So then we go to who are some of the key parties in data protection. So our first party is the data subject. A data subject means an identified or an identifiable natural person who is the subject of personal data. For instance, right now, you have registered for this webinar. We have the registration link required you to provide your name, your email address, your organization, and your phone number. In that case, you are the data subject because there's identified or identifiable natural, you are the identified person whom we have interacted with your, or rather collected your personal data. Then we go to a data processor. This means a natural legal person. It can be a public authority or agency or other body which processes personal data on behalf of the data controller. So we'll first go to a data controller. Means a natural person or legal person determines the purpose and means of processing of personal data. For instance, all of you are working in an organization, or rather, all of you have interacted with HR. So HR in most organizations are the data controllers. They determine, let's say during recruitment, they'll determine how the purpose of that data that they've collected and the way they're processing that data. Then also we also have the IT department. They will collect your data and then maybe they'll analyze it and store it. So those are some of the key parties in data protection. When you go to public offices, who are the data subjects? We have the citizens, we have the employees, we have the visitors, we have third-party partners. These are the people the public office interacts in their day-to-day. For instance, different ministries interact. Let's say, for instance, when you're applying for your ID, you'll apply for your ID here, then your fingerprints will be taken somewhere else, then like that. So there's that aspect. Or when you're applying for a police clearance, the first place you do is on eCitizen. Then after that, you go to DCI or a police station. They get your fingerprints, then they send them back. Then you get your certificate, something around that. So there's that. And also children with the consent of their guardians. Because children don't have the capacity, anyone under 18 doesn't have the capacity to give consent. Yes, so then we go to a data controlling processor. This is mainly for public officers to be aware of. So as a data controller and processor, you must be registered with the ODPC if you meet the threshold. So what are some of if you meet the threshold, what is the threshold? That company has an annual turnover of more than 5 million, it has more than 10 employees, it processes personal data for any purpose specified in the third schedule of the Data Protection Act on that. So any organization that processes personal data for any purpose, you must register. So they include, but not limited to, maybe canvassing political support, health administration, this is hospitality, it's property management, it's provision of financial services, direct marketing, and all that. So there's also processing of genetic data. These are some of the personal data that is going to be processed, and this will warrant any organization, whether as a company or as a non-profit, to register. The charges are different. For a data controller who is a company with such, with the registration fee ranges between 20,000 per year. The first time you do 40,000 when the period is 24 months. So must make the online registration through the standard form, registration fees. Then once they are vetted and verified, you shall receive a certificate. So that is what we talk about, the data controller and processor. Then we go to what is data. Most of us are here saying data privacy, data protection, and maybe you are not aware. You can share in the chat. You can share in the chat on what you think data is. Yes. So data refers to information which is processed by means of equipment operating either automatically in response to instructions given for that purpose. It can be information which is recorded with the intention that it should be processed by means of such equipment. It's recorded as part of a relevant filing system, and also as information, it can be numbers collected to examine, considered for decision making, or information in an electronic form that can be stored and used by a computer. So what are some of the categories of data? We have personal data, we have sensitive personal data, we have biometric data, we have public information, and we have health data. So mainly those are some of the data. This is not, the list is not conclusive as it's not limited. So yes. So yes, there's that. Okay, so mhm. So we have public data, personal data, and sensitive. I think this is wrong. Sensitive data. So personal data means any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person. For instance, your ID number is personal data. It's something that identifies you to that. Your birth certificate number or even a serial number for such things will identify you. Then we go to sensitive personal data, means data revealing the natural person's race, health status, ethnic, social origin, conscious belief, genetic data, biometric data, property details, anything that is sensitive that can be identified to you or information is unnecessary for the public to know. This is very there's no necessity for everyone to know. So these are some of the sensitive personal data. For instance, your biometric data, there's no need for that. Your genetic data, there's no need for anyone to know. So there's that. Then we go to public data. This is information that can be accessed from a public domain or public records. For instance, when you go to on your YouTube and then you search maybe news on certain things or even the newspaper, those are information that is on public records and it's identified as public data. So you might not, it's not personal data, but it's information, it might be personal data, but it is public. For instance, during the demonstrations, we were able to access certain numbers of the elected officials, elected representatives to the parliament. And this is because that information is public record. So yes, so there's that. Then we also have restricted data. This is data that can only be, it's for a specific purpose, for a specific use, which is not to everyone. So there's that. Then we go to what is data protection. We talk about data protection, data privacy. So data protection is the process of protecting sensitive information from damage, loss, compromise, or corruption. Or rather, data protection is the fair and proper use of information about people. So it's part of the fundamental right to privacy. So when we do data protection, this is when, for instance, in institutions, there are measures to protect that data. For instance, there's accessibility. For instance, in your laptop, there's maybe a password for you to log in. There's a password, there's a fingerprint, there's that. So those are some of the measures that are taken to protect sensitive information from damage. It also is the fair and proper use. For instance, when you provide your information, or rather your ID number for a certain purpose, that is the only purpose. So that organization that collected that information should not use it for any other purpose. For instance, we collected information, the capable when you're registering, they requested for your phone number, and the phone number was only for the purpose of you to be able to attend this. If they use it for more, for other purposes other than the one stated, we will say that that is a compromise of that data, or of that number that they collected. So yes, there's that. Yeah. Then we go to the principles. So these principles are mainly, or rather, they were born from the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, which were mainly enacted in 2018. Then us as Kenyan, because we're part of the EU, as British colonies, we adopted the GDPR. So what are some of the principles? We have the right to privacy of the data subject. And privacy is for them to be able to enjoy freely without nuisance. Then lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner. Any data that is processed should be conducted in a lawful manner, in a fair, and in a transparent. For instance, if information is collected and I would like to know how it's processed or how it's stored, it should be easy for them to tell me this is stored here and there, or this is stored in our cloud system. Then collected for explicit, specified, and legitimate purposes. Yes. So for this, we can look at the use of AI that has been quite, has brought about so much uproar, the generative AI. Let's say, for instance, now I go to ChatGPT and maybe Google something, or rather request for certain information. They take that information, they collect, they use it, and they even advance the versions of the generative AI that they're using, that they intend to release. But then that is, I am not aware of that because it is not the use is not how it's collected is not explicit, the purpose is not specified, it's not legitimate. For instance, I don't know the kind of information they're collecting. If they have access to my email, do they have access to other things? If I upload a document, will that document be also used for this purpose or this and this? It should be. So when you go to a public office and they request for your ID as a citizen, you have you enjoy the right to ask what is it for, or what this and this is done for. So those are some of the things. Even at work, when you're requested for maybe a copy of your ID and the reason has not been specified, you have the right to inquire, okay, I'll provide for this, but what is the purpose of this? Then adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary. There is the aspect of necessity. Only collect what is necessary. For instance, when you're applying for jobs, when you're making a job application, or when you go to let's say Huduma Center, and you're following up on a good conduct certificate, there's no need of you to provide for your NHIF number or even your NSSF number. Absolutely no reason for that. So there's no need of them to request you for that. Then we go to collected only for where valid explanation is provided whenever information relating to family or private affairs is required. Yes, for instance, when you're doing NHIF, you feel whether you're married or not. That is necessary. But when I'm applying for my ID, there's no need of me for them to apply to ask for that. If the names I would like are in a certain manner, or even when you're let's do doing what going for shopping, you pay for a product, then they want to ask for loyalty points. There's no need of them to inquire for your private affairs or even where you live, because that is not necessary, or even for a family member. Then it should be accurate and kept to date with any inaccurate personal data. The data subject has the right to erase or rectify without delay. So that is another principle that guides the processing of personal data. Then we go to kept in a form which identifies the data subject for no longer than necessary for the purpose which is collected. For instance, most organizations only have data for maybe 6 months, 7 months, the data retention period. So there is that. They are not transferred outside Kenya unless there's proof of adequate data protection safeguards or consent from the data subjects. So here we're talking about cross-border transfers. And mostly in Kenya or in other countries, there exist bilateral cross-border agreements that guide us or guide organizations how well they're supposed to transfer that data, through what channel, through what means. And after that, it means that in the bilateral agreement, it shall indicate whether both countries have equal measures in terms of data protection. For instance, the safeguards that are in Kenya will be the same safeguards that are in Uganda, so that this data is treated as valuable as it is. Because most of the time tunasemanga your data is valuable as you, and then you should treat it as if it's gold. Because nowadays we are in a very in a very technologized state, so we need to be able to keep up with the ever-changing dynamics. Then we have the data subjects. I'm a data subject, you are a data subject. So what are some of your rights? So has the right to be informed of the use of their personal data, have access to them, object to the processing, correction of any false or misleading, to delete or false or misleading data about them, not to be subject to a decision based solely on automated decision making. This may be the use of AI, because right now the implementation, or rather the inclusion of AI in our day-to-day is increasing, and organizations are making their work easier and efficient by the use of AI. Then we have received their personal data in a structured, commonly used and machine readable format. For instance, if I request, I should get a PDF. I shouldn't get maybe how do I say, for developers, the codes. I can't read codes, so it wouldn't work for me. So there's that. Then request the data controller and processor to transmit their personal data to another data controller or processor without hindrance. That is some of the rights that they enjoy. Yes. Then we go to, before we go to this, I think I skipped a part on on consent, privacy, policies, and notices. So, mainly, what is consent? Consent is the voluntary willingness of a data subject to have their data processed. So, when I say you have given consent, it means it is informed, it is voluntary, and you are willing to actually have your data processed in that manner. So, for instance, we request for your consent. It should be informed. By informed, I mean you have been given an overview of what the data is going to be used for, how it's collected, how it's stored, what are some of your rights, so that once you provide a consent, which can be withdrawn at any particular time, you can withdraw that consent. You are aware of what is happening. You have given it wholeheartedly, not just because there is need for it to be given for maybe a certain thing to be processed. And that's one of the things that we talk about when we see consent. Then in organizations, I believe most of you have signed policies, the data protection policies as an employee. There's also the issue of consent forms when it comes to videos, film, or anything about that. So those are some of the things that you should be aware of how they're processed. For instance, that in the office, if photos are taken of you, have you consented to them being published, maybe in the newsletter, maybe to be posted on your websites, maybe to be used when we're doing trainings? Have you consented to that? And if not, or maybe you have consented to a particular limit. So yes, there's that. Then we have notices. Notices, for instance, when you go to a website, most websites, let's say the Auditor General, or let's say NIPAS, or even others, one or even any website must have a privacy notice, must have a cookie policy. These notices are there to ensure that there's compliance, to ensure that any user who visits or even comes across that website, they are aware of how that is collected, what is happening, how it's stored, can you do this and this, and even if there are third parties involved, they are quite aware of that. So those are some of the data protection policies and all that. Then we go to breaches. So when it comes to data governance, this is where we talk about data security, data governance, and data breaches. So when it comes to governance, this mainly refers to the framework, policies, and processes that ensure high data quality, proper data management, and compliance with regulations. So mainly it involves defining roles, responsibility, and standards for data usage across an organization. For instance, it will determine how HR use this, it will determine what policies are here, it will determine what the IT do, it will determine the limitation and all that. Then we go to data security. It focuses mainly on protecting data from unauthorized access, breaches, and other threats. So for here, this is where IT comes in most organizations, and the data protection officer, because they match together to ensure that technical and organizational measures have been implemented to safeguard data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. For instance, maybe there is an archive, only few people have access to that archive. Or in the instance of sensitive information, there is authentication of that person to be able to access that. So once we have done this, what are we preventing? We are preventing a data breach, which is a security incident where sensitive, protected, or confidential data is accessed, disclosed, or stolen without authorization. So when it comes to a data breach, this is without authorization, and it can involve personal information, the social security number, credit cards, intellectual property, or corporate data, and all that. So that is what in that. Then we go to non-compliance and penalties. So in the instance that this office, the public office, does not comply with the regulations, or rather the provided guidelines by the ODPC, what happens? The ODPC will carry out an investigation. They also do audits, or maybe a complaint is made. For instance, on that promotional messages, I go to, I book, let's say, an airline, and then I start receiving promotional messages. But however, I didn't consent to that. Even in their terms and conditions on the website, that was not indicated. So there's that aspect. So what happens? I make a complaint, or rather I reach out to them and tell them, I didn't receive this, can I stop? So it stops, or rather they don't, they persist with sending me promotional messages. So what happens? I make a complaint to the ODPC. They listen the matter, we listen, we have a chance to defend ourselves, they have a chance to do all that, then they are fined, or rather they are given a penalty notice. And from there, I'm able to get maybe money or compensation for the agreed, for my agreed rights to privacy, or the I didn't consent to receive to such, because when it comes to data protection, consent is at the pinnacle of it all. And at the end of the day, remember that the right to privacy is not absolute and can be limited. For instance, in the instances of national security, yeah, your data can be accessed. So, as a public officer, what must you do to ensure that there's there's compliance, or data protection for the citizens that you serve, and all that. So as a public officer, you must be aware of the data protection regulations, all of them. For instance, the GDPR, the Kenya, if it is Kenya, the DPA, if it is Uganda, the PDPA, if it is Tanzania, they have their own. If it is Cameroon, they have their own. If it is the United States, they have their own. So you have to be aware of such because the compliance leads to reputational damage and monetary fines. For instance, the issue of the school, Norwayaki that use photos of their children to advert or their students to advertise for their business on their billboards, but consent had not been given by the parents, and even the students were still not aware. They were fined 50. So then we go to understanding the specific roles in protecting personal data. For instance, uh, we have hierarchies or rather protocol when certain data is being handled. So it is important for such procedures to be implemented and followed throughout to ensure that data doesn't land in the wrong hands, is not misused, is not mishandled. Yes, there's that. Then we go to recognize cyber threats like phishing and malware. Most people are victims of phishing and malware because you end up receiving an email. It looks most phishing or rather these emails look as genuine as the organization. You click on it, and your laptop is black. All information has been taken, and you cannot even aware. So there's that. And even malware, the viruses and all that. So that's one of the way. Then we go to have measures in place to protect the personal data they hold, such as physical and technical security measures. So security risk analysis and information security policies. For instance, when it comes to your laptop, when you talk about data is not only the one which is online, we have physical, because before the online we used to have files. So how do you store these files? How do you leave, when you leave your laptop, do you leave it on? When you have, do you have passwords in your work phone? Yes, so there's that. Then we go maintain a record of the personal information they have or plans to collect. For instance, anything that you receive, it is important to have a record of them in the system, and this will and also to ensure that there's a register for this or there's an inventory for this. Then we ensure data protection policies are in place. Sign these policies to ensure that you as an organization are protected and even you're aware of what is expected of you. Then we go to support and assist where necessary, data protection trainings. So for this, we support when the public officers should support where necessary. For instance, they can take part in the trainings, they can take part in advising or even financial support and all that. So those are some of the things. Then yes, I think I'm done for now, and I'm open to questions. So yes. Are there any questions or can you hear me? The training. Mm, oh,
Thank you very much. Any question? We are on the Q&A
sorry,
session.
I'm sorry you are not able to hear me. Okay, I didn't see that. I'm sorry. The training company is capable. Do you have any question? Yes, I'll share the material. I will endeavor to share the material, don't worry. I'm sorry for those who are not able to hear, but yes.
Good afternoon. I believe there are some questions that have been asked.
I can't. I
On
can't.
the Q&A session. Maybe if you could go to the QA session, please.
Register. Okay, there's currently in Kenya there's no registration for a DPO as a data protection officer. Mostly it's through certifications. Certifications is mainly through the ODPC doesn't provide certification, but we have the IAPP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals. That is what that mainly gives certifications for as a DPO. A DPO is more like because it's a branch in the legal profession. So you just learn, conduct trainings, attend to most trainings which are maybe conducted by other companies. And then from there, and also the IAPP and the CPIT. CPIT is the first one, but there are other professional trainings that are carried out. So Enoch has inquired, how would you how would you How would you manage data protection during a merger or acquisition involving multiple organizations like the current case of banks merging and sharing data with KRA? So when it comes to merging or rather acquisition, let me start with an acquisition. An acquisition is where they acquire the whole company. So they will take this information with it, but there's also there's a data sharing agreement. The data sharing agreement is done between the parties to ensure that proper data sharing is conducted within those parties. And this also ensures there's a checklist. When you're doing these mergers and acquisition, or even when you're doing commercial transaction between different organizations, nowadays they have provided a checklist for data protection. And that means that the other party should be compliant. And in the instance where there is transfer of data, there is need for a data sharing agreement to ensure that whatever information is shared and how it's going to be stored and managed or processed is equivalent to how fast it was. So there is that. And even sometimes if there's too much data, for instance, in the instance of a merger and acquisition, there is something known as the data protection impact assessment that is carried out to see the levels of the sensitivity and how vulnerable such information is going to be shared. So there's that. Sharing data with KRA is a public office and they might have even mandate to have that information. So sometimes for them, it's a requirement, it's a governmental requirement to even request for that data and have them so that they can be able to do their audits. One of the organizations that train, we have the Lawyers Hub. I think even one of it's going to be carried out soon. So there's that. Then, how does an aggrieved party engage with DPO in case of a complaint or a data breach through this? No, it's not. When you go to the website of the Office of the Data Protection, there's a complaint, there's an online complaint that you fill. Once you fill submit, then once it's submitted, they'll call you, they'll inform you, and then from there you'll have the right to, they'll investigate and even request if there's more information that is needed from you. You can request, even have the right to have representation because most of them are carried out like cases, but it's more through documentation. The parties are had through documentation. You file that, then they will contact the other party that you are filing against, that there is a complaint that has been brought against you, kindly respond accordingly. For international ones, yes, there are scholarships, but partial. Sometimes they are partial. Sometimes the scholarship is through a different, let's say, a training or rather a fellowship. You attend that fellowship, then you get that because there was one by the WAFT or something cyber fellowship where you go for the fellowship, but an added advantage you get that the IAPP because they see CAPM, CIC, CICS, I think yes. there are a number depending on the region. Even for the Lawyers Hub, it's the one they introduced, it's regional or globally accepted. So there's that. Then what are the legal frames of someone who breaches data protection? Okay, legal frames of someone. I'm not sure about that. Jamal, maybe clarify. So, how can I know of the legitimacy of? For most companies that offer such, you can always request for their accreditation to provide such. That's why I was saying, for instance, Lawyers Hub. Lawyers Hub is the one which has in Kenya, which has been given accreditation. Most of them have the accreditation certificate. So most of them, you can always inquire for that, and you shouldn't shy away because you shouldn't be trained by someone who is not professional. Then we go to AI is coming in strong, fast, and furious, and then wishes to protect data against such intelligent measures. So when it comes to AI, or rather the developing of AI, there are certain principles that guide the development of AI. For instance, there's a principle to ensure that there's responsible AI. By responsible AI, we're dealing with where the AI that is created, it shouldn't oversee or rather overlook its main purpose of being developed. It should protect that data. It should process that data in a manner that it's not corrupt or compromises. So those are some of the things that when it comes to AI, to protect data against that. So this is mainly when it comes to protecting data, that is a developer's, the one who develops it, or rather comes be or is behind such. So mainly that. So there's that sort of responsible AI, and also data protection mechanisms need to be implemented or rather integrated in that AI so that they can sift. Considering with AI, you can't delete that data. That's the problem. Yes, that's the problem. Then between how do you balance between how Jamel, okay, how do you balance data protection and also access to information which might be a conflicting? At the core of it all, data protection comes first. Access of information, if it is public, there is access. So this are when it comes to access, this is where data protection comes in on privacy, where access is only given to the necessary counterparts, or rather the necessary stakeholders in that. There's no need of everyone having data that, and then there's no need of you to have data that you're not going to use or is not going to be relevant to this. So let me just look, there's a question. Uh-huh. Why other telecommunication companies to give out data easily before consulting the owner? When it comes to search, for instance, I'll give the case of Safaricom because that is the one which has been in public domain. This is public information in terms of providing uh, data to this. In the instance, it's a matter of national security. They might not need to consent with you. The only thing, if they have been required by a government institution, they only need to notify you, but there's no need of you to give consent for that. So that's where the right of privacy is limited. So yeah, there's that. Then then go to the regulations concerning collection of biometric data like the iris scan. Can an organization be allowed to collect such data? No, for you to collect such data, you need to be a data controller and processor. This is where also informed consent was coming about. Like for instance, during the iris scan, there was not informed consent. So that's another issue. So that is why the process was stopped. Even when you go to Germany, they stopped the same. Australia, they did the same. So there need to be consent when you're processing such information. They need to be consent. There need to be regulation compliance in terms of registration. So there's that. Then you go. What remedy solutions would you advise to avoid breaches like the recent data breach? When it comes to breaches, this is an IT issue where they should have strong mechanisms. They should be monitoring for such. There should be regular audits. There should be the aspect of training staff, because you might find that breach by a BRS was caused by a phishing email. So there's that. And there's also the aspect of authentication and also doing regular audits within the system, or rather within the personnel, so that you ensure that the breach is not coming within rather than outside the organization. There's the aspect of robust security authentication. For instance, when you do authentication, you can have 4 or 5 authentications, or rather encryption. So these are some of the most important things to look around when it comes to search, when it comes to ensure that this one doesn't happen. How about this company that sells people's data to other institutions? Are they regulated? It is a crime to actually sell such data. And that's why data mining comes about. Uh, unless they provide that their data might be sold, or they have provided you with consent that this is information is necessary for 1, 2, 3, then it is going to be accepted. Currently in Kenya, we do not, the law does not accept that, and there's no regulation, because it's already a crime for you to actually sell data. Because what are you selling this data for? What is the purpose, and how is it going to be stored? And that's why we talk about data sharing agreements between parties. And also, are the data subjects informed of such instances happening? So why would they need also to buy data? What is the essence of this? So there's that. Do we have offices of data protection in every sub-counties? No, no, no. Currently, they are not. But we have Nairobi, we have Eldoret, we have Nakuru, we have Isiolo, if not Marsabit. I think we have Kisumu, we have Mombasa. The ODPC is doing the sensitization and is going around to ensure that a lot of every county is being catered to. So there's that. But it's a slow and steady process, because sensitization is still being done, because a lot of individuals or other citizens are not aware of their data protection rights. So there's that. Then how safe is our personal data in the hands of corporates such as ISPS? Is there actual oversight or none at all, since we keep hearing of cases of users being tracked by security agents in conjunction with the government? Okay, when it comes to government, the national government, your right to privacy is very limited. It's actually very limited, because the security concern of other persons overrides your right to privacy. So it's safe and it's also unsafe. So that's what I'll say. Yes. Then what sort of remedies that the commission does the office offer? There's a fine, there's compensation. There's mainly that. Mhm. Uh, what happens when it is a government organization violating your privacy? Does the office have the capacity to hold the government and its other agencies to account? Yes, it does. Yes, it does have the right to do that. For instance, there's a recent case on KRA. They went to court. There was issue about. Uh, okay, let me just. I can't even close. Okay. Uh-huh. I can't see all your questions. So if I don't. Okay. Let me just see. Yes. So they wanted to access the WhatsApp messages of that person who was in court for a tax issue, a tax fault, or something around that. So what happened is, the court held that that is not viable and it will be an infringement. So it has the capacity to do that. It has the capacity to even audit other organizations within it, because it's for all. It investigates both private and public entities, but they do also run on monitoring and audits. So yes, there's that. okay, in terms of the law coming up and limiting this privilege by the government, the only thing maybe we can do is create a balance where the interest, the purpose is just as specific as given. Yes, we're entitled to compensation if an organization spams your phone with promotional messages. What we'll do is we'll fail that, then they will contact that organization and tell them to stop, or we will show that we have been consistently requesting them to stop sending you messages. So, and they're still sending you messages. So we'll report, it will be hard, and then it's compensation, which depends with how much the damage is. So, yes. I think I've answered multiple questions. If there are more, maybe next time, but I'm not sure. One person was asking whether there'll be such a session. I think yes. Thank you, everyone. I think I am done.
Hey, thank you very much for the wonderful session. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, so I've been able to share I'll be able to share the slides. Keep on checking our social media accounts as well for upcoming sessions. Upcoming session on the webinars that we'll be having over the few months that is to come. So thank you very much for taking your time today to attend this wonderful session. And thank you for inviting other friends who have managed to attend. So you can follow us on on our YouTube channel in case you missed a section of this training, or you want to refer to any part that you did not get well. Visit us at Capable Training, Capacity Building Training on YouTube. I've shared the link with us. Yeah, you'll be able also to get the slides for this training thereafter. Thank you very much. Keep on checking on our website for more training opportunities from Capable Limited, so that we're able to help you grow in your professional career. Thank you very much. I will end the meeting at this point so that we may focus on our other day's engagement. Thank you very much, and feel free to reach out to us. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Oja oroikira kwa janga matare na mwiguithanie nao mari kuo ugakorwo na matigaku kwe riria urihitia uhitanie handu riria urihitania handu ndugukaumbũranio ndarĩkia kũmũkwata ũrĩa rĩrĩa mũrĩhĩtania